Hi, Dad.
I thought you were spending the night out.
I did. Scooch over. Oh, guess what? You know Billy's dad? You know, the one who goes through his own garbage?
One of them showed up to the audition with a red bouffant wig and 6-inch heels and walked out with a role that would define a decade. Another was cut from the Pittsburgh Steelers during training camp, moved back to Youngstown, Ohio, and ended up becoming the highest-paid actor on television. And you know what's even crazier? When Married with Children premiered on the 5th of April, 1987, it was the first program to air on the brand new Fox network in primetime, and the New York Times called it loud, coarse, and life of the party vulgar. 20 million people a week tuned in anyway. For 11 seasons, Al and Peg Bundy sat on a plaid sofa in Chicago and reminded every family in America that perfection was overrated. It was rude. It was subversive. It remains, to this day, Fox's longest-running live-action sitcom. And the 4 people who played the Bundy family went on to live lives that were funnier, darker, braver, and far more complicated than anything that happened in that living room. Here's what really happened to the Bundys. Number 1. E.D. O'Neill as Al Bundy. All 11 seasons. The man who almost played for the Steelers. He was the reason the whole thing worked. Ed O'Neill played Al Bundy, the bitter, shoe-selling, sofa-dwelling patriarch whose greatest achievement, 4 touchdowns in a single game for Polk High, had been followed by decades of quiet humiliation. Al was the anti-hero before the word was fashionable. He was everything television family fathers were not supposed to be. And Ed O'Neill delivered him with such specific, deadpan commitment that you couldn't help loving him. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because before Al Bundy, Ed O'Neill had actually been signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He played defense for Ohio University. He went to training camp. He was cut. He went home to Youngstown, Ohio, started doing community theater, and a few years later, a producer handed him the role of the most famous failed football player in television history. By season 8, he was earning close to $1 million per episode, the highest paid actor on television. But suddenly, something happened that nobody had predicted, because after Married with Children ended in 1997, O'Neill disappeared from television for more than a decade, did some films, and then in 2009 was cast as Jay Pritchett on Modern Family. Another patriarch, another family, 11 more seasons, 3 Emmy nominations, 4 Screen Actors Guild Awards. In 2026, Ed O'Neill is 79 years old. He has been married to actress Catherine Russoff since 1986, a year before Married with Children began. 2 daughters, a career that spans 5 decades, a Hollywood Walk of Fame star located because the universe has a sense of humor, directly in front of a shoe store. Al Bundy scored 4 touchdowns in a single game at Polk High and spent the next 30 years talking about it. Ed O'Neill scored the role of a lifetime at 41 and spent the next 30 years proving it wasn't a fluke. But while Ed O'Neill played the most famous underachiever in television history, the woman who played his wife arrived at that audition with a completely different idea about who Peggy Bundy was, and what she brought to the role was something nobody in the room had seen coming. Number 2. Katey Sagal as Peggy Bundy. All 11 seasons. The singer who became an icon. She was the other half of everything. Katey Sagal played Peggy Bundy, the bouffant-haired, bonbon-eating, magnificently lazy wife who refused to cook, refused to clean, and refused to apologize for any of it. The character was originally written as a drab couch potato. Katey Sagal showed up to the audition with a red wig, 6-inch heels, and an interpretation so specific and so committed that the producers had no choice but to cast her immediately. But you know what's even crazier? Before Married with Children, Katey Sagal was a professional singer and backing vocalist. She had sung backup for Bob Dylan, for Bette Midler, for Gene Simmons. She was a harlot. She had a rock and roll career. And then the wig arrived, and the career changed entirely. But there is more, because during the 6th season of the show, Katey Sagal became pregnant in real life. The producers rewrote Peggy's storyline to incorporate the pregnancy. And then, in a tragedy the show was not equipped to acknowledge properly, Sagal went into premature labor and the baby was stillborn. The producers, to protect her, filmed the entire pregnancy storyline as a dream that Al was having. It was never explained on air. Very few people who watched the show ever knew what was behind that creative decision. But that's not all. Because after Married with Children, Katey Sagal became a Golden Globe winner, Sons of Anarchy, Futurama. 8 Simple Rules, where she sat across from John Ritter until his death, and then carried the show alone. The Connors. She has been married since 2004 to Sons of Anarchy creator Kurt Sutter. She is still performing. In 2026, Katey Sagal is 72 years old, still recording, still acting, still with the bouffant energy, even without the wig. Peggy Bundy never once apologized for who she was. Katey Sagal spent her whole career doing the same thing, and it turned out to be exactly the right call. But behind the laughter of the Bundy household was a grief the audience never saw. And if Katey Sagal's story had its private shadows, the young woman who played Kelly Bundy grew up under the brightest lights and has spent the years since fighting a battle that no one who laughed at her character ever could have imagined. Number 3. Christina Applegate as Kelly Bundy. All 11 seasons, the one who carried more than anyone knew. She was the most famous teenager in America. Christina Applegate played Kelly Bundy, the gorgeous, cheerfully dim eldest daughter whose every scene was a masterclass in physical comedy, performed with total conviction. She was 15 years old when the show began. The world was watching. But here's where it gets really interesting, because behind the hair and the outfits, Christina Applegate was carrying things nobody watching ever knew about. Her mother, actress Nancy Pretty, struggled with addiction and brought violent men into their home. Christina later wrote that she was drawn throughout her teenage years to what she called broken birds men she wanted to fix. She was growing up in a house where fame was the backdrop and pain was the constant. But suddenly something happened that would redefine everything that came after. Because in 2008, at 36 years old, Christina Applegate was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had a double mastectomy. She recovered. She kept working. Dead to Me, Friends, Samantha, Who, 8 Emmy nominations, 1 win. But there is more, because in 2021, while filming the final season of Dead to Me, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She announced it publicly and finished the season anyway. In 2022, she walked barefoot because shoes were too painful to receive her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. By 2026, she was spending most of her days in bed. She published a memoir in March 2026, You with the Sad Eyes, and told Good Morning America, "There is no great, there's a better day and a less S day. This is a lifelong disease with no cure, period. Do." She told people that the one thing that gets her out of bed each morning is taking her 15-year-old daughter Sadie to school. "It's the only time we have together by ourselves," she said. "I tell myself, just get her there safely and get home so you can get back into bed." And that's what I do. In 2026, Christina Applegate is 54 years old. Still here, still honest, still, by every measure, the bravest person who ever sat on that Bundy sofa. Kelly Bundy made the world laugh for 11 years. Christina Applegate has spent the years since showing the world something harder and more necessary, what it actually looks like to keep going. But the final member of the Bundy family had a quieter story, and in some ways, a more joyful one, because David Faustino played Bud Bundy for 11 years, and what came after was smaller and stranger and, by his own account, exactly what he wanted. Number 4. David Faustino as Bud Bundy. All 11 seasons. The kid who made it work. He was the undersold one. David Faustino played Bud Bundy, Al's son, the self-proclaimed ladies' man who never quite pulled it off, the boy who absorbed every indignity the writers could come up with, and played them with a timing that made even the weakest material land. He was 11 years old when the show began. He was 23 when it ended. But you know what's even crazier? David Faustino spent much of his post-married life doing things nobody associated with primetime sitcom fame. He became a DJ. He performed under the name DeLil. He released music. He hosted parties. He appeared in independent films and kept taking voice work Mako in The Legend of Korra, a role that introduced him to an entirely new generation of fans who had no idea he'd ever sat on a plaid sofa in Chicago. But there is more. because David Faustino remained close to his cast. In 2026, he stood on stage at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles, alongside Ed O'Neill, Katey Sagal, and Christina Applegate, for a charity reunion called An Evening with the Bundys, benefiting the Race to Erase MS organization in honor of Applegate's diagnosis. He has a daughter, Ava Marie Grace. He is still working. In 2026, David Faustino is 52 years old. The boy who survived 11 seasons of being Bud Bundy grew into someone who turned out to have exactly enough self-awareness to enjoy the absurdity of all of it. Bud Bundy was always the one nobody took seriously enough. David Faustino turned out to be the one who had the most fun with what came after. And that, in the end, is not a bad inheritance from a show about failure. Married with Children was never supposed to be a love story. It was supposed to be a punchline. Critics called it mean-spirited, misogynist, a bad idea for a bad network. And 20 million people a week said they didn't care. Behind that plaid sofa were real people. A man who was cut from the Steelers and found his second life on a sofa in Chicago. A singer who showed up with a wig and changed what television wives were allowed to be. A woman who survived breast cancer, then multiple sclerosis, and still drives her daughter to school every morning because it's the one thing that gets her out of bed. And a boy who grew up on screen and found a quieter, stranger, more joyful version of adulthood than anyone expected. In January 2026, the four of them stood on a stage together in Los Angeles, and the audience gave them a standing ovation. There is only one original Married with Children, and now you know what it cost and what it gave the people who made it.